Welcome back to Big Bets on Campus Live, presented by BetMGM. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, and this is the NCAA Tournament Round 2 betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today are Mike Calabrese and Anthony Dabbundo. We will also be joined later by the one and only universally loved Darren Ravel for a market report, and the legendary Sean Koerner for some player props. Before we do get started here with our first of two best bets, I do want to remind everyone to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there, in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. And also, a reminder, our sponsor, BetMGM. When signing up, use the bonus code ACTION to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get right in to our best bets. Anthony, you're going to lead off again today. What you got, sir?
I'm going to go with your Cats, the Kentucky Wildcats on the money line against Kansas State. I think they have a massive edge on the glass. They're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. If you watch their game against Providence, you saw vintage Oscar Tshiebwe had double-digit rebounds in the first half. Just a huge performance for him. And Kansas State has massive size issues on the interior. They will get dominated. I thought Montana State would be able to do that too. They just couldn't finish anything at the rim. They were able to get a good amount of rebounds in that game. They also have the much bigger talent edge. This is a Kansas State team that has overperformed all year long, hasn't been great away from home. And Kentucky isn't going to rely on the three-pointers. We saw Montana State try to shoot their way back into the game last night against a very good perimeter defense for the Wildcats. They could not do that, but Kentucky will get the ball on the floor, lean in on the undersized guards, get to the rim, and get to the foul line as well. So I like the Cats here. I think it's interesting that Duke is getting all this pub as this massively improved team in the last month, and they are. But Kentucky has also very quietly turned the corner and is playing like a top 11 team in the Bart Torvik efficiency in the last month. I think that quite isn't being baked into the market like you're seeing, an overinflated Duke potentially. So I like Kentucky here to win this and get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I agree. Kansas State just hasn't been the same team away from home. They really profile as closer to a 6 seed if you just look at some of their power ratings. I thought Montana State, they were right there at the end, and they couldn't make a shot. They also uncharacteristically couldn't make a free throw. They dealt with foul trouble to their best player in the first half, and they were still right there and probably, maybe cover if they make a couple of free throws, don't get a flagrant late. But yeah, you're right. That 3-point defense that Kansas State has been known for all year, that strength is really negated once again because Kentucky's not really reliant on the three. They have more talent overall here. Big O and company should dominate the offensive glass, and they have the length to bother the Kansas State guards. So hopefully Kentucky's finally got to the weekend after a couple upsets in the SEC tournament and last year against St. Peter's. Hopefully they can now get to the second weekend. I agree. That's my best bet as well to start things off. Mike, how about you? Where are you going to go first?
I like over in Creighton Baylor. Baylor's interior defense, to put it lightly, is super soft. They're 315th in 2-point field goal percentage, and that's great news for Kalkbrenner, who's coming off one of his best games of his entire career. He absolutely lit up NC State. They got Burns in foul trouble. I see a similar game script playing out against the Bears. And then the other side, Creighton was fortunate. They left a lot of Wolfpack shooters open. NC State just couldn't take advantage. They finished 3 for 14 from long range. When you look at Baylor playing from a come from behind scenario, at least how I see the game playing out, you got to love their guards in Flagler, George, and Cryer. I think this has the potential to be played in the high 70s, 80s from a pace perspective as well. So I'm going to go ahead with the over here and finally buck this under trend. It's just been the under train here in March Madness thus far.
Yep. All right. So a shootout, which I could see in Creighton Baylor. Good stuff there on our first best bets. Let's pause on the sides and totals and throw it to the legendary Sean Koerner for some player props. Sean, what you got?
Thanks, Stuck. So I have two props I love today. And for the first one, I'm going to the Michigan State Marquette game. I'm going with AJ Hoggard over 5.5 assists. I think this is a great matchup for him to rack up assists. against Marquette. Marquette plays at a super fast pace, so Michigan State should see more possessions here. But Marquette has allowed an assist on 59% of field goals made this year, which is one of the highest rates in the country. So it's a great matchup for assists, and a lot of that is due to them allowing pretty high percentage for 3-pointers. So we're projecting this closer to 6.5 assists with a 63% chance of clearing 5.5. And for my other prop, I'm going with Blake Hinson for Pittsburgh over 19 points, rebounds, and assists. We're actually showing value on both the over for his points and rebounds, so it's just seemed ideal to combine them all along with assists. But he has a ton of upside, specifically in the points market, just given Xavier tends to be vulnerable beyond the arc. So this is a matchup Hinson could exploit. We're projecting him closer to 24.5 points, rebounds, and assists, which gives him a 64% chance of clearing 19.5. So those are the two props I'm on so far today. Back to you, Stuck.
Thanks as always, Sean. Good luck today on all of your props. Make sure you follow him on the Action Network app for any additions. Always a great follow. Now it's time to get to our second best bet of the day. Anthony, back to you. What do you got?
I'm going to go with the Creighton Blue Jays money line here as well. Not worried about the points. They're right around to pick them anyway. I think Baylor's pick and roll defense is going to have major problems here. Mike just talked about their interior defense being as bad as it is. Well, one of the major things they struggle with is the roll man on the pick and roll. And I think Kalkbrenner is going to have a ton of ability to rim run here off those ball screens. Baylor's guards, they've been switching a lot. They haven't been very good getting themselves into bad mismatches. I have major question marks about their ability to guard Creighton here at the rim. And I think, Creighton has struggled a little bit offensively in the last couple of weeks, but they played a bunch of pretty good interior defenses. That's not going to be the case here against the Bears. And they're the much more balanced team offensively and defensively. I think they should be a small favorite here. The only concern that I do have is Kalkbrenner in drop coverage against the Baylor guards. That's how they guard most of their pick and rolls. They don't really want Kalkbrenner having to guard out on the perimeter, and they kind of press up on the guards on the perimeter. That could leave room for Flagler and Cryer and off the dribble to hit some mid-range shots, but I'm okay trading that in this matchup where I think the Blue Jays will get much better shots at the other end. So I'm going to take Creighton on the money line.
Yeah, I think the weakest unit in this game by far is the Baylor defense, which has just plagued them all year, and I think that might end up being their ultimate demise. So agree with you here on the Jays. Mike, what you got for your second and final best bet?
All right, it's time to fade the darling of this March Madness, Fairleigh Dickinson, coming in 355th in opponent shooting efficiency allowed. They had double-digit losses this year to Stonehill, St. Francis, PA, St. Pete's. Here come the Owls. I don't mind laying the huge number. Their offense has an opportunity to boat race them in this game. And then the game within the game a little bit, we talked about it leading up to the Purdue matchup, how small FDU was on their front. The Owls, by mid-major standards, are an elite defensive rebounding team, so no extra opportunities to make up for a potentially off shooting night for FDU. So I don't mind laying the big number here. I think the Owls roll. And I mean, kind of going under the radar, FAU in the Sweet 16 should be one of the best stories in college basketball, but at this point, they're going to have to win one more to be able to get their national recognition.
Yeah, FAU, I mean, look, this line maybe a week ago before this upset probably would have been like 18, 19. You're going to have a lot of people falling in love with the underdog here after a huge upset, but FAU, look, FDU wants to turn you over. FAU doesn't turn it over. They can handle the press. Those are things that, coming into the tournament, I don't think anyone thought Purdue was going to lose. But those are things that people were worried about with Purdue, primarily in this particular matchup, if they had won that game. But I think FAU should overwhelm the Knights here, and we'll see how they respond emotionally after that huge upset that I think had a lot more to do with just Purdue melding and the moment being too big and just some of those shots. They didn't want to shoot them, and when they did, they weren't even close. All right, so I'm going to go for my second and final best bet. I'm going to go TCU here. I like them to keep this game close. If not, I think they're going to win it outright. I'm assuming Mike Miles will be fine. He came back in the second half. Scary moment for TCU. Basically willed them to a victory. But that was a much scarier matchup just on paper. Gonzaga has more talent. But going up against Arizona State that doesn't let you really get in transition, and they have an elite rim defense. Well, Gonzaga's rim defense is really poor, and so is their transition defense. And this game should be played up and down. That's exactly how TCU wants to play, especially without Lampkin. And TCU is the best transition team in the country. If they're playing up and down with their NBA guards, they're going to score here. And I think this game will be up and down, right down to the wire. I'll happily take the points with TCU. Go Frogs. All right, let's pause again and throw it to Mr. Darren Ravel for a market report. Darren, what you got?
All right, another day of college basketball. Let's get through the most interesting splits. We start off with Michigan State Marquette. Marquette is a 2.5-point favorite, and 77% of the bets and 63% of the money are on Marquette. UConn, 3.5-point favorites over St. Mary's, 81% of the bets, 93% of the money on UConn. Fairleigh Dickinson against FAU. Fairleigh Dickinson is a 15-point dog. They are getting 85% of the bets and 63% of the money. Miami, Indiana. Indiana is a 1.5-point favorite. 62% of bets and 79% of the money to the Hoosiers. And TCU Gonzaga, 4.5-point favorite for the Bulldogs. They're getting 66% of the bets and 59% of the money. Now, let's get into totals. Heading into Sunday, per our Evan Abrams, unders are now 33-11, 75% in the NCAA tournament, including 20-4 over the last 2 days. Pitt Xavier, 151.5, 93% of the bets and 95% of the money is on the under. Then we go to Kentucky, Kansas State. The number is 145, 84% of the bets and 93% of the money is on the under. Marquette, Michigan State, the number is 141, 67% of the bets and 84% of the money is on, you guessed it, the under. UConn, St. Mary's, 39% of the bets and 83% of the money is on the under. So the public not thinking this is getting around anytime soon. And Creighton and Baylor, 146 is the number, 75% of bets and 74% of the money is on the under. So all the lopsided bets on the total, all on the under. And a reminder that Big Bets on Campus, presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Guys, back to you.
All right. I do want to remind everyone, Action Network Watch Party. Next Saturday, Elite Eight, I'll be there. Chapman will be there. Chris Raybon, Maria Marino, and other Action players will have a good time. Everything's free. RSVP on the link. That's all you need to do. Go to my Twitter. I'll tweet it out. You also can go to actionnetwork.com for more details and just RSVP. And that's all you need to do. Look forward to seeing you there if you're in the area. All right. One final task at hand, and that is our potential upset of the day. I don't think anyone's going to be picking FDU to move on, but who knows? Maybe we get our first 16 in the second weekend. Anthony, what you got?
I'm going to take the Michigan State Spartans to upset Marquette. Marquette played a pretty flat first half and then pretty much took over with the Cam Jones show in the second half against Tanner McGrath's Catamounts. Sorry to them. But I think Michigan State matches up pretty well here. They run an elite pick and roll offense, and I still have doubts about Marquette. You can get them to switch, especially in their smaller lineups, and then you can take advantage of them off the dribble. And I think that's where Michigan State can have success here. Also, Marquette's perimeter defense will let you get wide open threes. Their perimeter defense has not really been punished this season, but when you watch the games and you look at some of the synergy data, they allow a ton of unguarded threes. Michigan State, one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country, made almost 40% this season. So I like the Spartans as a live dog. If they're hitting their threes, they're live.
Agreed. Mike, what you got?
I was basically singing Jeff Capel's praises going into the play-in game, saying that, you know, how bad they were looking defensively down the stretch. They get absolutely crushed by Duke in the ACC tournament. I thought that was them bottoming out. Brand new season, fresh start, come up with a new game plan. Well, they had a great game plan, particularly in the closing seconds against Mississippi State. They didn't let Tolu Smith beat them. Then they go in and they play Iowa State and they hold them 23% from the field. That's really good news because they still have the capability to play at a top 20 level offensively. So I'm going to see them upsetting a Xavier team that I think is emotionally spent after, you know, going 15 rounds with a Kennesaw team that basically was able to expose all of their weaknesses on the defensive end. So I think this is a good spot for Pitt. I originally picked them in my bracket to go to the Sweet 16. The 11 play-in has historically been a launching pad for so many teams to make deep runs into the second weekend. I think Pitt continues that tradition. I'll take the Panthers on the money line.
Yeah, we've seen, I think that a team in the playing game has won at least one additional game in 11 of the past 12 tournaments. So there's certainly been a precedent for success, and that has served as a launching pad, even with the tough travel schedule in there. I'm going to echo a game we already talked about before, and that is Creighton. Look, it's a 3 versus a 6 seeding wise. But I think the lower seed here should be favored. And I think they have matchup advantages on both sides of the ball. And I think the weakest unit by far is that Baylor defense. And I think it's ultimately going to cost them. So I'm going with the Jays to advance. All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks to Anthony and Mike for joining me. Thanks to Sean and Darren, of course, for their time as well. And to our audio and video teams on the back end. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining. One final reminder to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. Also, Big Bets on Campus, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you subscribe. We'll have tons of content this week leading up to the Sweet 16 and beyond. Thanks also to our sponsor, BetMGM. Good luck on all of your wagers today, and we will see you during the week. Good luck and cheers.